Honorable Mike Johnson of the state of Louisiana, having received a majority of the votes cast, is duly elected Speaker of the House of Representatives for the 118th Congress.
And we're in a time of extraordinary crisis right now, and the world needs us to be strong. They need us to remember our creed and our admonition. Turmoil and violence have rocked the Middle East and Eastern Europe. We all know it, and tensions continue to build in the Indo-Pacific. Our nation's greatest ally in the Middle East is under attack. The first bill that I'm going to bring to this floor in just a little while will be in support of our dear friend Israel, and we're overdue in getting that done. We're going to show not only Israel, but the entire world that the barbarism of Hamas that we have all seen play out on our television screens is wretched and wrong, and we are going to stand for the good in that conflict.
On this vote, the ayes are 311 and the nays are 112. The bill is passed. Oh, one voting present. I missed it, but thank you. Okay. The House will be in order. The House will be in order. The chair would remind my colleagues to observe proper decorum. Flag waving on the floor is not appropriate. The House will be in order. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise? I said, no. The gentlewoman from Florida.
Stand up. Put him in a stand flag.
Okay. The gentlewoman is not recognized. Colleagues, no, I'm going to. The House will be in order. All members are reminded to observe decorum.
Calling all patriots, calling all American freedom lovers everywhere. Today, we are back on the HopLight's channel, and yes, this will be the first part of the HopLight's series on how to save America. Yeah, so here we go. This is going to be a longer series for the channel. It's something I just felt like I have to do because we're right now in the middle of an election year, even though it doesn't really feel like it at the moment. It feels like so much is going on in the world, most of it's bad, that the farthest things from our mind right now are campaigns and political stumps and speeches, but that's coming very shortly, I can assure you that. And by November, roughly 6 months from now, if you can believe it, the United States is allegedly going to vote and choose its next president. So I just wanted to do this episode right now because I think that the United States is without a doubt a nation in decline, rapid decline. And it feels like it's completely orchestrated. And the only way you could fix something like that is to completely orchestrate a reversal and put this country back on track to not just survive, but thrive. I'm not trying to pretend as though any of these plans that I have in this series will come to fruition. I'm just saying, here is what I would do if I were in charge of the country and had no roadblocks in the way and could just carry forth an agenda to right this sinking ship. So, without further ado, let's get into part one and talk about HopLight's plan to fix America. To save America, rather, not just fix it. Because fixing it, well, I mean, that's going to take more time. I'm just talking about saving it right now. Just getting it off life support. Number one, we start with the legislative branch. And the first few parts of this series will be dedicated to our federal government, which unsurprisingly is where the majority of our problems begin and end, is the U.S. federal government, the swamp as people call it, the D.C. machine. This is where the majority of America and most likely the world's problems begin and end. And this is what needs fixing the most. And I don't have any illusions that DC will ever fix itself. It's literally like asking somebody who has all of the resources that they could ever want at their disposal and almost none of the consequences. You just trust that person to be honest and forthright and a good steward of government, and make the promise that they won't abuse it. But if they do abuse it, well, who's really watching the watchers? So I have no illusions that that DC is incapable of fixing itself. But let's talk about the legislative branch and how we need to completely upend the rules of the game for the legislative branch and bring these people to heel. And as you could tell from my opening clip, where our government, the Congress, and of course Joe Biden, our president, signed it, agreed to send our money as U.S. taxpayers to foreign countries to the tune, I think, of $95 billion. Money that, of course, we don't really have, but we'll find it somewhere even if we have to print more of it, to fight more of the proxy war in Ukraine, which is only going to get more Ukrainian men killed, as I've talked about in past episodes. Money to Israel, of course, which is undoubtedly waging a genocidal war against the Palestinian people in Gaza. There's no more charade that can be defended anymore that this is a war against Hamas. I think we're well over 35,000 Palestinian civilians that have been either recklessly or deliberately killed by the Israeli Defense Forces, and they've displaced 5 times that. And now Gaza is 100% facing a real possibility of starvation, famine there. So that's a genocide any way you slice it. We're helping fund that. I think we're going to give Israel $26 billion so they can keep doing that. And then we set aside, I think maybe 10 for Taiwan, which most likely will go to fight their proxy war once China decides to invade, which I'm sure they will. And then I'm going to read an article from Zero Hedge about $3.5 billion that you are going to pay for through this bill to facilitate even more unwanted forced migration from the Middle East and Africa so they can bring new people here into our country that will live amongst you whether you like it or not. Yeah, that was in the bill as well. But let's talk about how we could possibly fix this from continuing in the future. Number one, and I know I'm not the first person to say this, I think even Donald Trump has mentioned this, it's term limits. The U.S. Congress, House and Senate, is the only branch in the federal government now that doesn't have identifiable and fixed term limits. Now, the Supreme Court, which I will get to, of course, in part 3, has lifetime terms. At least that term is defined, right? It's like a Supreme Court justice cannot serve past their lifetime. Okay, well, yeah, no kidding. But we'll talk about fixing that as well in part 3. But there is no term limit expressed in the Constitution, either in the articles or in the amendments, to give the House or Senate term limits. That needs to change. And my term limit parameters would be thus. In the House, you would serve no more than 10 years, which means if you're elected, you can be re-elected 4 times subsequent to your first election, but after your 4th re-election, you would be term limited out, which means the only way you could serve in the federal government beyond 10 years in the House would be an appointment to the Supreme Court or a run for the presidency and election to the presidency, which would give you your 8-year term extension max in the executive branch. So 10 years in the House, let's say you're elected to the President of the United States, and then you're re-elected as POTUS. That's 8 years in the executive branch, 10 years in the House. 18 years is the max you could serve in our federal government. And we know that there are several people in our government right now that have served, quote unquote, well beyond in excess of 35, 40 years. So think about that. I think the average age of an American right now is under 35, and you have people in our government who have been in our government in the Congress longer than the average person has been on planet Earth. And that 100% needs to go away. When you have these people who can literally run on other people's money and promise projects and special interest groups all of these things and figure out how the game works, they are just on a perpetual cycle of 2 years, campaign re-election, 2 years, campaign re-election. And this is how we get burdened with people like Joseph R. Biden, Nancy Pelosi, John McCain, Mitch McConnell, Chuck Schumer, the late Dianne Feinstein, like the rogues gallery of these people who have been nothing but career parasites is longer than my arm. And that needs to stop. For the Senate, a 12-year max term limit, which would give senators 2 terms. So same rules apply, 2 terms in the Senate, election, re-election, then you're out. And it's fixed. So people know the day you're going to walk out of the Senate, the day you're going to walk out of the House, they could start a stopwatch by it. From the day you come in to the day you go out, 10 years for the House, 12 years for the Senate. Again, if you get appointed to the Supreme Court, you could serve in the judicial branch, or if you run for president, you could serve 4 to 8 years in the executive branch, no more, which means if the executive branch is where you end up after the Senate and you get reelected, the most we would ever have to deal with you is 20 years. 20 years and you're out. That's if you go the max for the Senate and then you get a 2-term presidency. Highly unlikely for most people. So, like I said, for the rogues gallery of people I just mentioned, the Chuck Schumers, the Nancys, the Joes, the McCains, the McConnells, they would be ancient history years ago. Like Mitch McConnell or even Harry Reid, if you remember that guy. They would have been out of office for such a long time that if someone were to mention their name, you would probably scratch your head and have to go back, like in your data bank, like, oh, Dianne Feinstein. Wasn't she that politician from San Francisco? Like, yeah, she left office like in 1996, I think. That's what would happen under these term limits. And that's what needs to happen. Without term limits, that is a breeding ground for corruption. If people can make a career out of their quote unquote public service in the Congress and they realize what a cushy gig it is and they can stuff their pockets like without anybody being the wiser, they will do so, and many, many people have, which is why you have this level of corruption in the Congress, which is why you see all of this money, the people's money, being squandered on foreign wars, because these foreign wars, these proxy wars, are nothing but money laundering vehicles. And I've said that since Jump Street when it comes to the war in Ukraine. This is a money laundering operation. The country of Ukraine, since at least 2014, has been nothing but a money laundering front. And the Congress is helping keep it afloat with your money, of course. Number 2, and I don't even know why I have to write this, but it needs to be written. Citizenship. If you're a member of the House or a member of the Senate, you are a U.S. citizen. That means you are a legal and lawful U.S. citizen, which means you were either born here, and we'll get into an immigration episode, by the way, so that those requirements are going to change too, like drastically, or you are naturalized, and you go through the legal process, you do everything that's required of you to become a legally naturalized citizen, you can serve in the House and Senate, and that's it. You have no other citizenships. You can't be a dual citizen of another country, and I think people know what I'm talking about when I refer to that. You can't be a citizen of 2 other countries in addition to the U.S. You are a U.S. citizen and only a U.S. citizen. And that's that. Don't know why I have to say that, but it needs to be said apparently. Number 3, draft registration, military service is a requirement. If you don't have to register for selected service when you turn 18, or you don't enlist in the military or seek to go through officer candidate school, you do not get to serve in the House and Senate. Now, why do I say this? Because in the U.S. Constitution, by the articles and the powers given to the separate branches, the Congress is who votes to declare and send people to war. If you, as a young person, 18 or up, were never subject to a draft and didn't enlist, you don't then get to join this membership in Congress to vote to send other people's kids to war. I know a lot of the women out there are going to say, well, wait a minute, we don't have to register for the draft. That's right, you don't, which is why that should change. The draft should be universal for every man and woman in the United States, because every man and woman in the United States should be subject to fighting on behalf of the United States, because this is where we all live. If you don't want to register for the draft, you don't have to. That should be an option as well. But if you don't register for the draft and you don't enlist, you don't later get to run to be a House member or a senator. I mean, hey, it's time for some tough love, right? We're sending people billions of dollars to wage war against Russia, and the Ukraine is now possibly losing a generation of men. All the people that are voting to send your money to Ukraine risk nothing. It's not their money. It's not them that has to go and fight. It's not their family members who have to go fight and die. It's other people, and it's other people's money. If you want to serve in our government, you should first have to have been subject to a draft or enlisted in the military. That's just the way it is, and that's just the way it should be. If you're going to vote in your old age to send young people to go fight and die, you should have at least had to have risked that much when you were younger and didn't have that decision-making ability. Someone made that decision for you. And if you're lucky, there will be no draft, there will be no war, but you should at least have to have that name on the dotted line with your draft registration card if you want to vote to send other people younger than you when you're a member of the House or Senate. Number 4, income, assets, and investments. This is getting fun now. They should be open, as in they should be on a public blockchain subject to regular audit. The income, that obviously is fixed through the general schedule of the United States. Everybody knows what a junior senator or congressman or woman is paid. Your assets, your investments. This is where it gets more important. Why wouldn't people want to post in live time their buys, their sells, their trades, their swaps for all stocks, bonds, commodities, whatever, you name it, on the public, in the public marketplace? These assets, these investments, is where the real money is made. Now, people always say, like, wow, it's amazing. All these senators and House members, they go to Congress with holes in their shoes, right? They don't have 2 nickels to rub together. But after 25 years of serving the people, they walk out of there multimillionaires. How do you think that happens? You think it happens when they're making $155,000, $175,000 a year, which is good money, but you don't walk out a multimillionaire being a senator or a congressman unless you do some side action work. And that side action are the assets and the investments you make in the meantime. Now, let's say I'm a congressman. I'm from Texas, right? I've got a buddy. He works in the oil industry. He says, hey, I've got this new device. It allows us to explore oil off certain coastlines. It's 100% environmentally friendly. And, well, we can extract 25% more oil than the leading competitor. It's incredible technology. And I say, yeah, what's the name of this thing? Okay, good. I'll be right back. I talk to my members of Congress and saying, we need to draft a new energy bill for oil exploration. It's going to be environmentally friendly. It won't harm the environment. Of course, can't have that because that's the number one thing. And number 2, it allows for more oil extraction than any leading competitor product currently on the market. We should craft this legislation and directly contract this individual's company, who I don't even know, by the way. I understand it's groundbreaking technology. What my fellow congressmen know that the rest of the public doesn't know is that this company's stock is about to skyrocket when we craft this legislation that will monopolize everything in the offshore oil market for this company. And we're going to buy up all the stock that we can publicly for this company as fast as we can, because on the heels of that buy, the bill is going to get passed. And by the time that bill is passed and you figure out this company is going to explode in value, our shares go up with it. It is the most exclusive insider trading ring in the world. And that is how these people are able to walk into Congress with holes in their shoes and walk out with money bags full of multi-millions. So what should happen? An open blockchain trading asset and investment ledger. So if you're a congressman or a senator and you decide, I want to buy some stock in, what is that company? XYZ Oil Industries, because I hear they have a really good product. When I buy that stock, I, by law, will have to go onto a blockchain ledger and make those purchases, which means any human being in the world can go on this live ledger and see me, Congressman Smith from the state of Texas, make this, $30,000, $40,000 purchase of shares of company XYZ Oil Industries. So there is no secrecy here, right? If I'm making these purchases of these shares, other people can watch me make that purchase and make it along with me, which means I can't really corner the market and my insider trading ring is completely ruined because all of my buys, my sells, my trade swaps for everything, every asset that I could purchase on the market is open. And that again is why the United States Congress right now is slow walking blockchain technology, because they're afraid that people are going to want all of this on a public blockchain ledger that anybody can look up that will be practically without error. And that's the beauty of the blockchain technology, is that you can see it in live time and it is accurate, more so than any other man-made ledger that we've possibly used in the past. They're terrified of that. And it can be audited, which means if there's a president and he's of the opposing party, he could say, yeah, Representative Smith, I noticed that you kind of had a windfall lately in some purchases. I'm going to audit your assets on this ledger, which means if you decide to circumvent this blockchain ledger and understand that if you make the purchase personally, it will show up. But let's say your nephew, Thurston Howell IV, he's a lacrosse player at Johns Hopkins, but he also day trades on the side. And you ask Thurston IV, how's it going, nephew? He's like, good, great. Class is good, awesome. I need you to do me a favor. Would you mind making a share purchase of XYZ Oil Industries? Don't ask why. I'll wire you the money through this account, and I just need you to make sure those shares get bought at this time. And make sure you buy them before this date, as in the day before the bill gets passed. If that happens, that will all be subject to an audit. And if someone in the Congress is found to have tried to circumvent this open blockchain, the president of the opposing party can have his Department of Justice, Attorney General, have this individual congressman or senator investigated for insider trading and failure to disclose assets, investments, and income, and prosecuted. Keep them honest, right? Checks and balances. That was the whole point of the three different branches. We need to restore that. Number 5, failure to pass budget / shutdown. This has become like a hot button topic over the last couple of years, and President Trump oversaw, I want to say, the longest government shutdown in U.S. history. It was almost 30 days or maybe more. But that basically is Congress saying to America, our job is to pass a budget first and foremost so that the United States can keep running, like the government stays open, it has funding. Well, we couldn't do it this time around, so I guess we're going to just shut down. But you know what doesn't shut down during a government shutdown? Their pay. They still get paid. They can still use government aircraft. They still get security details. That pay should be frozen immediately. The first thing that's frozen in a government shutdown is the income for senators and congressmen, should they fail to pass a budget. You don't get to go to work and perform half of a service but expect all of your pay for the day. You don't get to go to work and try to produce a good, but don't really produce it and then still get paid as though you did. Why does Congress get to go to the Hill, not pass a budget, which is part of their constitutionally required duties, but not pass the budget, but still get paid? First and foremost, the pay is frozen in a government shutdown. That's number one. Also, all the military aircraft and assets that would normally be at their disposal, those get grounded and parked immediately, which means they're taking personal transportation on their own dime while their pay is frozen. And that will give them more incentive to actually do their job. And 6, and this one, I'm going to read an article from Zero Hedge, which I often do, but I think this article was the additional backhanded slap in the face to Americans after the open palm slap in the face of this $95 billion budget that was ramrodded through. And that is foreign income and assets, which will come with a lifetime prohibition, which means if you serve even 2 terms as a member of the House, or 2 years as a member of the House, or even 6 years, 1 term as a senator, you are prohibited from any foreign income or assets ownership outside the continental U.S. Or even the Hawaiian or Alaskan territories. You can, obviously that's part of America, but lifetime prohibition from foreign income and assets. A lot of people figure, oh, you know what? Well, maybe I'll make more assets and income and investments from foreign sources, right? I'll just have somebody open a shell company offshore, like in the Bahamas or in Costa Rica, and then the lobby groups will just make sure money gets routed to those companies, and then I get paid from those companies through lobbying groups or some other vehicle. If a source of money is coming into the United States, a U.S. congressman, senator is prohibited from benefiting from that income or that assets, be it real estate, be it gifts, vehicles, you name it. Which means foreign interests are not able to buy favors from our Congress by promising them future income or assets after their term limits expire. And I say, well, that's not really fair. It's like, no, it's totally fair. If you're going to be a public servant and serve the American people, you should consider that a lifetime honor. That's something that will go down in the history of your family tree as something you can salute. As in, well, a great-granddad was a congressman for the state of Mississippi for 8 years. And, there's a road named after him that runs through, Jackson, whatever. Like that in and of itself is your reward, is your lineage gets to claim it served in the legislative branch of the United States. You do not need foreign income. You do not need foreign assets to sweeten the deal. If there are foreign income sources or foreign assets, that tells me that during your time, you were promised these things for legislation and things you did while you were in office. But you couldn't get around this income and asset investment blockchain because you risked being audited. So it keeps them honest past their terms in office as well. But to reinforce this point, I will read the Zero Hedge article as to why these 6 simple steps, and I'm sure there could be more, but feel free to add them in the comments what you think would be needed in addition to these. But I'm going to read an article as to why these 6, and in particular this one right here, is so very necessary. And this is from Zero Hedge, as I said, from yesterday. April 30th. $3.5 billion slipped into Ukraine-Israel aid bill to supercharge mass migration from the Middle East. Tucked away in the $95 billion military aid package for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan is a $3.5 billion slush fund to open new processing centers for Muslim migrants in what Senator Eric Schmidt described as a bid to supercharge mass migration from the Middle East. As Breitbart points out, the $95 billion package does not include any funds to help rebuild America's border defenses against illegal migration, but it does contain $481 million to settle migrants in U.S. cities and, of course, the $3.5 billion to expand migration programs worldwide. The $3.5 billion was granted to the Department of State, which works with many international groups that feed and transport migrants on their way to the United States. Biden's deputies are now using the refugee programs as an adjunct to their diversity expanding equity migration policy. For example, Biden's deputies used the program in March to import 3,009 migrants from the safe and democratic countries of El Salvador and Guatemala. They're also using the refugee funds to expand migrant routes from many African and Muslim countries. In March, they pulled 12,018 people from the Congo, plus 16,732 migrants from the Muslim countries of Afghanistan, Syria, Pakistan, Iraq, and Eritrea, according to a report by Stacker.com. According to April 23rd release from the Biden DHS Visa Granting Agency, quote, the Biden-Harris administration set the refugee admission ceiling for fiscal year 24 at 125,000 refugees, adding, with the opening of the Doha field office of May 7th in 2024 and the Ankara field office of May 9th, 2024, USCIS will have 11 international field offices. Other international field offices include Beijing, Guangzhou, China, Guatemala City, Havana, Mexico City, Nairobi, Kenya, New Delhi, San Salvador, El Salvador, and Tegucigalpa, Honduras. I can never pronounce that. So we have the U.S. government encouraging migration, both legal and illegal, which hurts low-income Americans the most while neglecting the borders. Seems we've learned nothing from Europe. Yeah. No, they've learned from Europe, all right. This $3.5 billion is going to NGOs. This mass migration push, this is not about refugees. This is about importing people from the deepest, darkest hellholes of the world so that when they come, they will become dependents on the United States government. They will become lifetime welfare cases. And they'll bring all the crime and the quote-unquote cultural enrichment that goes with it. This is about money. They are going to use the migrants from Africa and the Middle East as a bludgeon to destroy the U.S. demographically, but more importantly for them, politically. It will create a new voting class of people who come from nations, races, ethnicities, and cultures so diametrically opposed to what the current fabric of America is that it will forever alter it. And it's being done with your tax dollars, which means they're going to send money to these countries in exchange for migrants that are quote unquote refugees. But they're coming from countries that aren't under any conditions of war. They're just going to these countries and asking them in exchange for cash to send people to our country who have no business being here and who will be no net benefit. This is $3.5 billion of your money that the Congress is sending to replace you. There, I said it. Yeah. And the money that's going to fight the war in Ukraine and Israel, that's all going to get sent to defense contractors. That's all going to get sent to the military industrial complex weapon makers. That's all going to get sent to oligarchs in Ukraine. To, I guess, keep that place afloat through the election cycle. And the money that they don't use is going to get rerouted and funneled back as income and foreign assets to our members of Congress. And that's why you saw them waving those Ukrainian flags. It is to keep the US dollar in circulation for at least the next election cycle. They know that ride is about to stop. The US dollar enjoying hegemony over all of the other currencies of the world is going to come crashing down in grand fashion, I think. And the US dollar, the petrodollar, will no longer be the world's reserve currency. But this allows them to pump a little bit more into the world economy so we can at least run out the clock until the 2024 election. But they want that money coming back to them in either foreign assets or foreign income after they send it to Ukraine, Israel, and parts unknown. And this is why we need this open blockchain to see where their income and their assets are actually coming from, where their investments are being made. And I think once people understand how putrid and corrupt the US Congress has gotten, these 6 steps will be just the beginning for how we reform it. But first and foremost is the term limits. These people cannot make a lifetime career out of living off the US taxpayer and lining their pockets with shady income investments and assets that nobody knows about, but they buy because, as I said, they are the most exclusive insider trading ring in the world. And they make good use of it, believe you me. So that will conclude part 1 of the HopLight plan to save America. We start with the legislative branch. It is the branch, I believe, that needs the most cleaning up. It needs a complete teardown and a redo. The founding fathers of this country never probably foresaw any of this happening, although I'm sure some of them had a possible, premonition that it could take place, but not in their lifetimes, because when they were congressmen, when they were senators, that job paid peanuts. I mean, even the presidency, it paid next to nothing. It was public service. So the good men who founded this country felt it was their obligation to serve in the House as the representative from Massachusetts, or a senator from Virginia, or be president for 4 years. And then they would leave public service, enter the private sector, and become doctors, lawyers, farmers, whatever. And that's when they would make their living. They would make the living in the private sector of the land that they fought and bled for and created the greatest experiment in human history. Nobody wanted to be a lifetime public servant. But when the lifetime public servants came in and changed the rules, where you had this never-ending cycle of the career lifetime politician, that's when everything, in my opinion, has gone belly up. And it will drag the rest of the country down into the abyss with it unless it's fixed. But that's just my opinion. Part 1, How to Save America, the HopLight plan concluded. I hope you tune in for part 2. We're going to cover the executive branch, which, as I said, in 6 months, we will go through another election cycle, and we will find out who the next resident of the White House will be for the foreseeable 4 years. Okay, hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give us a thumbs up. As I said, comment if you have any additional points you would add to the list. I think these 6 are, like I said, a good place to start. But again, it's just a start. And we need more people talking about these things because it is necessary now more than ever. Okay, hope you're all well. And we will see you next time for part 2, the executive branch. Till then, take care.